Evil Deuce is joining me today. Oh gosh. Oh gosh. Hello today, Jeff.
That's a grandiose entrance.
I'm psyched that we're doing this. I was just telling you off air just a second ago that like I went a couple weeks without recording one, and if anyone's watching the video and looking at us right now, you'll see that I'm in a different location. I'm in the middle, not in the middle of a move, but like I've kind of started my move in the summer, and I'm not fully all the way moved in yet. And I was trying to have just a couple days of the week that I would go back to my apartment and record from there. Like I kept the studio still there, but it's tough to like stay consistent with that sort of situation, especially like jump into too much of my own crap right off the bat because I have a guest. But now I just got in a car accident and I lost my car, so I don't have a car. So getting back and forth to my apartment and here is not easy anymore.
Right. Well, I'm in the middle of a move too, and just bear with me for a second. Thanos, I will play when I play. I told you I'm doing a show. If anyone's listening on an audio and not a video, my backdrop is like a chess set in space. So it was a little joke there. It's more of a visual joke, though.
Yeah. So I wanted to right before we get into too much, I just want to say how grateful I am that you blessed me with some of your time today. I think, and I say it a lot, if anyone's listened frequently to the show or seen anything I've done, I always talk about how grateful I am for the currency of your effort and your time, because those are more valuable currencies than anything. Those are what you spend and you can't get it back. So the fact that you've put some aside to kind of come hang out with me for the afternoon, I'm very grateful, very, very grateful.
Well, I appreciate that. You're very welcome. Happy to do it.
I have to say, man, I discovered you through Wrestling Soup. It's one of my go-to wrestling podcasts that I listen to, and I appreciated your legal breakdowns that you give sometimes of like what was it, maybe the Janelle Grant stuff, the Vince McMahon thing, a few other ones I think I've heard you do, and I was a big fan. And then I started I listened. I think not the last one that you did, but the one before that. I heard you say what your Twitter handle was on the episode, and I was like, oh, damn, I didn't catch that. And then I kept searching, and I was searching the wrong thing kept coming up. So then when you did it the next time, I was like, oh, I'm not missing it this time.
And well, then I do, so it gets easier.
Yeah, and then when you did and then I listened to the Garden of Doom, and I was like, this guy's got layers. This guy's got so many layers, and I always appreciate like somebody who's got so much stuff going on. Just all the plates spinning, I appreciate it.
But we're evolving.
Evolving for sure.
I'm probably on brand for you.
Very, very much. Yeah, I mean that's why I felt like this kind of conversation had to happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, cool. I'm happy to have it. I was sort of curious as to why. I sampled a bunch of your shows, and it's usually comedians, musicians. There's some other wrestlers in there. Sometimes they do all of those things, which is not unusual. Wrestlers are often creatives, and creatives are attracted to other creatives, and and here's me, sort of what's wrong with this picture.
Don't minimalize yourself, man. You're a fascinating guy, man. You got a fascinating story and an education and a perspective that nobody else has got. I mean, you lived an experience and you have a life that not other people can sit around and fake that they have.
Oh, I
Like,
get it. It's just not, it's just it's a different background than most of the guests, and I think that's cool as hell, or at least different than most of the guests I saw. You have almost 340 shows out there, so there's only so many I saw. So perhaps I've missed like 300 where there's people exactly like me.
yeah, there's plenty of nobodies, plenty of
Yeah,
nobodies.
perfect.
Feel Please, I hope you feel welcome, and I hope you feel free and safe to be who you are, and share whatever your thoughts and opinions are, and if at any point you're uncomfortable, feel free and feel safe to let me know.
No, I feel like I'm in a Turkish tent and somebody's offered me green tea, and we're sitting cross-legged on lovely Persian carpets or
Is
Turkish
it the
carpets.
drum that did that?
It's just the whole vibe. I feel like there should be beaded curtains.
Yeah, I I was gonna hang a tapestry up, but I I already made you wait for so long, so I just didn't.
Well, if it was Carol Carpenter or Carol King's tapestry, that would have been well worth it.
I don't know what that means,
Oh,
unfortunately.
it's old music from like around 1970.
Oh yeah, that was before I was alive. But um, it sounds familiar.
Yeah, well, now it gives you something to check out. But yeah, Tapestry is a pretty famous album. I don't know if the
Oh, that
music
was the name of an
necessarily.
album. Okay, that's why the reference was lost on me because I didn't know if it was the name of a song or an album or
Yeah, it's an
you
album.
know.
Whether there's a song of the same title, I couldn't tell you. I'm not that big a Carole King fan, but yeah, no. I mean, listen, I was only 2 or 3 years old then, also, but that's sort of nostalgia. You sort of hear these things when you're 3 years old, and you hear music for 5, 10 years, and then you hear it like once every 5 or 10 years. Now with XM radio and Sirius radio, you can sort of search for whatever you're looking for, but it's still a variety. And I mean, sure, we can download whatever we want, but what's the fun in that? I, I bought a bunch of movies on DVD when that was sort of a thing to do.
Mhm.
Never once wanted to watch any of them.
Uh, Dude, we're the same. I have such a collection of DVDs, and the process of pulling it off the shelf, taking the disc out, and putting it in. Ugh.
Yeah,
Ugh.
I feel you. I feel you. But if the same movie like is, I flip through and it's on like HBO 3 or whatever, but like, Snatch is on, cool.
Uh, I the other day, and this is maybe why I'm wearing this shirt
Hmm.
because my fiance was like, "Oh, I found this movie we can do a deep dive on. It's called They Live. Have you ever heard of it?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I've talked to you about They Live 100 times." I
Yeah,
was like, "I wear the They Live T-shirt all the time."
yeah, it's one of the early conspiracy movies, in the semi-modern era. So yeah,
Right.
I
Yeah,
mean,
and then since we're talking about it, I was like, I have like a special edition DVD, and I was searching all in my collection, and I couldn't find it,
yeah,
and
I mean,
so
right.
I'll find it eventually, but I just couldn't find it when I was looking for it yesterday.
Convinced Roddy Piper he was a Hollywood guy, and it introduced us to who later became not Doctor, Captain Benjamin Sisko, and of course Hawk from Spencer for Hire. Avery Brooks, I think was his name.
Was he the conspiracy guy?
He was the guy that Roddy Piper, as a wrestling fan seeing this movie, had way too long a 50-50 fight with in the movie. But it was his ally. He's the tall African American gentleman, bald.
Oh, you're talking
Okay.
about David Keith?
Oh, no, 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 not David Keith. I know David Keith. He's in everything. No,
Mm,
Avery Brooks, Captain Benjamin Sisko from Deep Space Nine.
okay, oh, right. Less educated about Star Trek.
That's nothing to be ashamed about. The ripoff, the more successful ripoff of Babylon 5, which was this superior show with inferior production.
Mm. Yeah, man, I think I had friends who watched The Next Generation when I was a
Mhm.
kid, and I sat and watched it sometimes when I was over their house, but I never watched it myself. I never got deep dive into it. But my aunt and my uncle are Trekkies.
Yeah, I know a lot of Trekkies. I mean, but like wrestling, there are casual Star Trek fans. I'm not a Star Trek fan, but I watched parts of most of the shows and a fair amount of the movies, and so I can probably pass for a Trekkie, but I'm definitely not a Trekkie. But Babylon 5 actually did a Garden of Doom deep dive episode on Garden of Doom with Matt Williams, who's he's like a space journalist, and like he teaches a course at the Kepler Institute, or at least he did, and he works for some they do astronomy casts like Fraser Kane and I can't remember, believe I don't remember the female co-host, but she's the scientist. Anyway, and I also did one on.
Is that a stage name, Fraser Crane? Is it?
No, Fraser Kane is. I mean, I assume it's his real name. Is he's an astronomer? So it's.
Oh, because on Frasier, his name
Oh, of
was
course.
Fraser Crane. So
No, of course, yeah.
she,
Definitely there's a play there somewhere, but it's just a coincidence, I suppose. But yeah, I also did a deep dive on the reboot of Battlestar Galactica. I think that was also with Matt Williams, or was with someone else who. Those are like sort of like my go-to science fiction TV shows.
I'm trying to. Do you ever watch Rick and Morty?
No, I'm a
No.
little old for that stuff. Like that all came
Well,
up
you know
when.
what? That's what I thought that exact thing. I thought that like I was like, oh, I was like, I mean, I'm not into cartoons, but like I watched it and I got addicted to it. I'm hooked on it.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's not the content. I'm not trying to come off as a snob. It's just they
mhm,
came around at a time where I wasn't looking for TV shows,
right.
if that makes any sense. Like that, I was young in my career, looking for a wife, getting engaged, getting married, having kids, trying to make money. It's like, you know, you're watching, you find shows that both you and your spouse can, watch, looking for like things like South Park and Futurama and Rick and Morty and things like that. The next set of cartoons I watched were the ones that my kids would watch. So, and like, thank God for SpongeBob and Pinky and the Brain that somehow kept them happy and kept me happy too.
Yeah, yeah. How old are your kids?
Oh, now my oldest is 24. My youngest is 20. I actually do a UFL podcast with the oldest. I mean, we did it all of one season because there is only one season, but we'll come back for season two.
Well, you could uh, you could pivot into like college football. That's not going anywhere.
We were asked to do that, but we declined because we didn't want to. We don't. Neither one of us has the time to follow college football
Right.
or pro football with that level of degree to do a podcast and sound smart. But the UFL with all of its 10 games and 2 playoff games,
Right.
that's
It's
easy.
not much. Yeah. And
Yeah.
it doesn't occupy your time too much.
Yeah, because we were on at first it was self-produced, but then like a small network sort of picked us up, and they're like, "Yeah, can you do like year-round sports content?" And I said to him, I said, "I'll do it for you, Jake." That's his name. I said, "But I don't really want to." He's like, "I don't really want to either." So we're both like, "Yeah, that's no." He loves MMA, like he do an MMA podcast, but I don't follow MMA, so I'd
Um,
be out for that.
what's this Jake guy's name?
His last name's Lippman, just like mine.
Just like you. No, because we do. Me and my friend Lou. He was a wrestler in the WWF. Lou Marconi. We do a pro
I
wrestling
remember Lou
podcast.
Marconi.
What's that?
I remember Lou Marconi.
Yeah. So me and Lou, we do a pro wrestling talk podcast that we do on a MMA network, and the guy's name is also, what was the name again?
Was
Damn,
it Dirty Lou Marconi? What was
it's
this?
Beef Stew.
Beef Stew Lou Marconi. That's all right. That's right.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, I do a podcast with a former WWE also. I mean, Justin Gabriel was his name there, but his name is PJ.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah,
You know what? When you said the PJ Black, I kind of knew that was his name, but I wasn't sure if that's who you were. See, other more than one person can have the same name. Fraser Crane, for example.
exactly. Well, I mean, PJ Black isn't even his real name, but it is his wrestling name for most of his
Right.
career. Both.
Yeah.
He was also Justin Angel before he was Justin Gabriel.
I knew his brother. Like his brother came here for a while. He was at the Monster Factory, I think.
He's never once told me he has a brother. So, which doesn't mean he doesn't have a brother. It just means he hasn't told me he has
It's
a
like
brother.
it's like Zuzu or something. It's like it was a peculiar name.
Well, they're from South Africa.
Yeah, yeah,
So it
yeah.
might be a nickname from from one of the languages that's
Right.
not English, and maybe it's Boers or Afrikaners or maybe one of the indigenous languages.
Mhm. I'm not educated enough on that
Neither
to
am I.
really kind of to throw and how much of a jerk and how much of a dingbat would I look like if he didn't have a brother and I just misremembered this person's existence. But
No more of a dingbat than I would look like having a podcast host and I don't even know he has a brother. But in fairness, I'm not sure he knows that I have a brother. So
right, yeah. I mean, there's certain things. Uh, Lou and I have been doing. We've been doing two podcasts together for over a year now, and we've never met in person.
right.
But, like, there's just certain stuff you like you kind of sign in and record, and it's kind of like working a job with somebody or something.
Yeah, cyber friendship is a different kind of friendship. I mean, it's a though for how some of the people from Unpopular Review, I've met them in person. Now I'm not on Unpopular Review, but some of them were also with me on Hammerlock Hangover, and that's done also. I don't have any wrestling podcasts any longer that I'm officially on. I mean, sometimes I do shows with Hami Media Group, and sometimes I'm on the Drew Yari. And as you said, I do the legal shorts on Wrestling Soup, which I think I'm calling what I call Body Slam Briefs now.
Okay,
A little bit of a funny story there because my law
because
firm
of
had
underwear.
well, legal pleadings when they're the argumentative or the convincing type, the more
Hmm.
detailed ones, they're called briefs. So for
Hmm.
appellate level, you file a brief. So like the Supreme Court, you file briefs. So also because of the underwear, so it's sort of a double entendre there. Um, but I originally called it Black Letter Body Slam, but my law firm actually does a show called the Black Letter, and they have a trademark on there. They're like, well, you really can't use the black letter because we have to protect our trademark. You know how it works. We can't let it be diluted. And since you do work here, people could think that we're affiliated. And I'm like, you're absolutely right. Don't worry, I'll find. And they actually, came up with actually, they asked me to draft a licensing agreement. I did. I'm like, and it's signed and all that. It's for no money. It's just like I would promote the show and put a link to their show in it. I'm like, but Mish actually does the production, and I didn't feel like asking him to do all that for,
Right.
I have no idea whether 16 people listen to it or 16,000 people listen to it or 160,000. So I don't know what kind of a burden that is to ask. I just changed the goddamn name. So
Yeah, the simplest answer is always the right one.
right. And my whole show, Garden of Doom, is based on me wanting to know things I don't want to know, but not wanting to actually learn for myself. So I find a
Right.
guest that can tell me about it, and I call it a show.
You know, I frequently do that myself, and there's a and and because I do so many of them, and I I consume so much stuff. I'm not going to remember every single thing, but like I'll have that as like a timestamp, like a time capsule. I love looking at this and having these conversations as like where I can look back on it and be like, this is where I was this is where I was in my life, and this is what I consumed, and this is what I got a new understanding for, all in this moment, and it's like all time stamped from, you know, I'm going to be 41 next week. Uh, I
Happy birthday.
I what's that?
Happy birthday.
Thank you, thank you. But I started this when I was 33. So like the reason I'm calling it evolving is like I'm growing too. You know what I mean? It's like
Sure.
when I go back and I listen to this, I'm hopefully hearing new things that like maybe I went through or I changed or my mindset changed on some certain things. Like for sure, like I'm a different guy than I was 2 years ago, but definitely a different guy than I was 7 years ago.
Oh yeah, I mean you're definitely in that phase, but I am too. I mean it slows down a little bit. Sometimes it speeds up when something happens, whether it's adverse or positive. But usually it's something adverse where you really learn a hard lesson and turn some things around. Other mistakes are, I mean, the social media behavior. Like, I mean, like I'm certainly no angel, and I mean, but it's right there. It's at Dose Evil. I mean, it's right there in the name. So my other, Twitter account is, a little bit more benign, so and boring as a result. But it's less wrestling. Dose Evil is the one that's wrestling for those who are interested in that. Um, I mean, the other one, out of Icarus Fella, is mostly me pitifully trying to get Jonah Goldberg to acknowledge me.
What,
Who's Jonah Goldberg?
no, this, is it he wrote that show? No, that was Andrew Goldberg.
No,
Who?
Jonah Goldberg. I mean, he's probably around my age. He's like a lifelong conservative. He is I don't know if he was a never Trumper or became an anti-Trumper, but he's comes from like the Heritage Foundation, the Weekly Standard, National Review, that kind of thing. And him and Steve Hayes, they actually quit Fox News being panelists during the first Trump administration, and they formed something called the Dispatch. And Jonah Goldberg is me if I could write well and was better spoken, and smarter. I mean, but he did all of those things. But he's like, but he's also like a sci-fi geek, and he likes nerdy things and stuff like that. So it's like between him and Mike Pesca, there are people who like I could have been, but didn't quite make it. But Jonah Goldberg is the one that I pitifully tried to get to acknowledge me. So if any of you know Jonah Goldberg, just all I want him to do is listen to my Battlestar Galactica podcast and let me know what he thinks. And like, love it or hate it, that I'll be satisfied. It's like that one time that you actually like have a threesome with like two hot girls, and you're just like, this is great. I just, I've done it. And so check.
Mm-hmm. At one point in time, I think I was involved in a match with oh god,
Regular Goldberg.
no, there was like a 5-on-5 team, and Drew Gulak was in one of the teams, and they called the team Battlestar Galactica.
That's funny.
And I think Eddie Valentine booked that.
Hey, that's funny. I mean, it's objectively funny. Hey, listen, if any of your wrestling friends want to come on Book of Black, I'm trying to do as much of the booking as I can. It's a sort of a burden on PJ, and I actually have assembled 3 alternate co-hosts: Mr. Thomas, who's in MLW, Super Panda, who's sort of over the place, but most of his work is actually in Hollywood under his real name, not under his luchador mask. And the legendary Lufisto said she's gonna come on, and that'll probably kick off slowly this year, but more robustly January 1st.
Well, I don't hang out with that many wrestlers. I don't have that many wrestling friends, like on a regular basis. The wrestler I hang out with the most is Lou. I can get Lou to come on your show. I could be a guest on your show. I'm a wrestler.
If anyone wants to come on and you're interested in something that is maybe a little bit wacky, weird, or fringe or unusual that you don't necessarily, but you would love to discuss it for like an hour and a half with other people who are interested and can probably give feedback on it. That's what Book of Black affords. It's to talk to wrestlers about pretty much anything other than wrestling, except for Tyrus, who talked about whatever he wanted. But he's Tyrus, so you don't stop him, and you can't. So
I see his face on Gutfeld. It's on in the bar all the time that I work at, but I've never listened to it. And a friend of mine, my friend Chris, is on Gutfeld pretty often.
Oh yeah,
and I see him on there with Chris. I'm like, hey, look at that. But
yeah, that's really cool. I mean, it's always fun when you see people that on TV, and you actually, I mean, listen, I spent all of 45 minutes with Tyrus Cyberwise. It's not like we're best friends, but he did what you're supposed to do. I tagged him in the show. He retweeted it on, from both of my accounts. It's not like he blew it off. He was interesting on the show. He took more time than anyone else, but that's what the guest is supposed to do. And he was interesting and he was interactive. And there was room for a sequel, so, we certainly left it where we could continue the conversation in the future.
Always leave them wanting more.
Exactly. Yeah. So I mean, I have absolutely no complaints. Do I agree with all of his politics? No, but that's I mean, social media, it's so easier to say I judge somebody by, this, that, or whatever. And we're all more than one thing.
Social media has made the world so like hyperbolic. Like it feels like everybody has to agree with everybody on everything.
Hmm.
Like not everybody has to agree. Not everybody has to be the same. Like
Right.
that's what we're talking about inclusion, but then get mad at people for saying stuff we don't like. Like how is that inclusive? That's
Right.
it's a strange fine line between like what's too far because like some people anything's too far.
Right. And people seem to have lost the ability to hold two thoughts in the head, understand nuance, or understand context. So, a good
Mhm.
example is where you found me doing Wrestling Soup, the legal briefs. If I'm analyzing the Janelle Grant suit and I'm pointing out that there might be weaknesses on one side or the other of the case, that doesn't mean that I support, shitting on a woman's head without her consent. Even with it, is not something I'd be down with. But if you're into that, I don't understand it, but okay. But
Mhm.
but if I'm pointing out that there's an arbitration clause, and arbitration clauses are usually honored because courts prefer anything that's not a trial. That there's 3 years of history here that shows that maybe it was reciprocal, and maybe it was sort of like a mutually, they both got what they wanted out of it until they didn't, and then one of them obviously isn't the multi-billionaire. Just common. That doesn't mean that I'm saying she's a liar. It doesn't mean that I support Vince. It just means that I'm analyzing. If I was a defense attorney, I'd feel like I have a lot to do, especially after the shock and awe of it. Nobody
Right.
cared. Nobody cared. And now P. Diddy is basically taken, like, 7 lanes of the 8-lane highway on that this kind of story. And now, and then you got Matt Gaetz and, well, basically everyone nominated to the cabinet. So
You know what's weirding me out, and I've seen a couple like real short, uh, reels or whatever talking about how weird it is that, and this freaks me out, being somebody who has one of these. But they said that the same day that the P Diddy, uh, like all that stuff came out, that on that day, like every CEO of 23andMe resigned.
um, yeah, I mean,
There's
okay.
something fishy going on. Like
I mean,
there,
it's
and this is
interesting.
distracting.
It might be. There could be a complete relationship there. Maybe that's where the news came. There was the hack from 23andMe got it. Maybe it's just a coincidence. I mean, lots of stuff. There's 8.1 and 8.2 billion people in the world. Like, more than one event is going to happen on the day. Um, I mean, that's there's some correlation and causation, but asking the question is legitimate, and seeing if it can be investigated and coming to it. But just instantly saying, "Oh, there's the connection." I mean, sure, it's fun to do it. We all do
No,
it,
yeah,
but
yeah. I'm just saying that it got like it didn't get the coverage because the all the coverage went to Diddy. I wasn't saying that those were related things.
they might be. But I mean, yeah, you're right. I remember the story.
Right.
Um, but I think it's also when is filed for bankruptcy the next day, which is another good reason for a whole board to resign because they failed. And I mean, nothing is private in bankruptcy. It's I mean, once you're in the court system, it's all public information. So if anyone wanted to look, they could. And some actual reporter or independent researcher, they probably should. I guarantee they find something scandalous in 23andMe's use of data or whatever. I'm sure something violated some terms and conditions, or something that was buried in the terms and conditions that nobody knew that they checked off to. I mean, there's you can almost always guarantee that somebody did something awful.
I mean, I'm a little weirded out that I sent my DNA and agreed to the terms and conditions. I'm gonna have a clone of me out there somewhere. Like if I want this message to go out to all of my fans and friends. who joined me here. If I'm ever talking and I don't sound like I'm myself, I may have been replaced by a clone of me.
But also if you need like a liver or a kidney or a heart or something, I mean, maybe having that clone out there is the ultimate insurance policy. You can totally
I
Lex
mean,
Luthor it. Isn't that what Lex Luthor was doing for like 30 years, trying to build clones of himself so he could live forever?
well, I mean, do you if you're faced with the decision uh, to live forever or like I guess it would depend on what your idea on like what the afterlife is. Like if you're convinced that there's no afterlife and there's nothing else, do you want to live forever or it's really I mean immortality or like do you ever watch Black Mirror?
Sure.
Like when they had like that person's consciousness stuck in a teddy bear for
Oh,
forever.
I don't know about that one, but isn't that Ted? I mean, so
Yeah, like Chucky. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, yeah, I think that if you were, I mean, first of all, if on a philosophy 101 level, if you're immortal, I mean, what in life is special? I mean, you would just be an anarchist or a nihilist. I mean,
Yeah.
but I guess in 100 years you could go through cycles. But I mean, unless you're really well to do, I mean, you're going to have a lot of either have to be really patient, wait for the shit that you have now to become antiques in 200 years that you can become rich,
Right.
or you're gonna have a lot of struggle. I mean, I guess seeing new wonders that occur, but you're also gonna have to live through a lot of hellscapes. I don't think I'd want to be immortal, at least not without like Zeus-like powers.
I think it would be cool to stay this exact age I am right now for the rest of my life. I enjoy that.
Hmm.
I'm gonna quit aging right here and right now. I'd be cool with that. This is my favorite version of me that I've ever been. Uh, but I I don't want to I don't want to take up room on this planet. There's a reason why there's a timeline on
I think
people's
so.
lives.
Yeah, I mean they've put it there in the in the Old Testament, or whatever you want to call it. You're not to live more than 120 years.
Well, I mean, uh, in Garden of Doom, have you ever deep dove into like the Anunnaki and the
Oh
the
yeah.
the the timeline, the lifespan being shortened?
Oh yeah.
Uh, that
Absolutely.
whole thing.
Not only did I mean, it was one of the first things that back when Shah and I were co-hosts. I mean, we talked to the Inhumans, Bobby Anthem, Bobby Blaze about that a couple times. I read the Sitchin Chronicles or the Earth Chronicles, whatever you want to call it. The 12th planet Nibiru. Um, I mean, I think that Sitchin's version of it is largely bullshit, but I admire his way of trying to craft a pseudoscientific story, to the myth and extend it. But I mean, it's it's everywhere. So yes, we have, but it's not just the Anunnaki. It's the Watchers, which led to the Nephilim. It's I mean, it's the demigods. It's the same story all over. But I mean, my personal view is that it's just a way to make the original rulers divine, and then you had Pharaoh as God's representative on earth. He's Horus on earth, Ra in death. That kind of thing, and you had the same thing going when Sumeria, Gilgamesh is 2/3 divine, 1/3 magic, and they had the same thing in the Far East. I mean, Kim Jong Il's or their family is still doing it. We're gods on earth. We are, the Pope, God's representative on earth. The Dalai Lama is the Buddha's representative. We, it's still right here. We're still practicing the same thing. It just doesn't feel the same because somehow things feel more mystical when they're from the past, and then books and then stories are on clay tablets. But yes, I mean, I've had Gary Wayne on the show at least 4 or 5 times. He did the show specifically on the bloodlines. He wrote the Genesis 6 conspiracy. I've had L.A. Mazzarelli. I've had, I mean, tons of people on the Phelim. I've had J.J. Johnson from Southern demonology talked about the Septuagint and the Book of Enoch. I've had people talk about. I mean, the show is a little bit academic at times, but on Book of Black, I mean, for instance, we had, I mean, PJ and Super Panda, they're both Masons, and they talked extensively about the Anunnaki. And then we had a guy named Raider, who that's not even his real luchador name, because he wanted to keep, his even his
anonymity.
yeah, even his wrestling anonymity anonymous. But he talked about all sorts of stuff on it. I mean, it was the only show that PJ and I both agreed that we needed to put a warning in the notes about the content of it. But
Okay.
the short answer is yes, absolutely. Have we ever? I mean, the Nephilim, me not knowing what the hell the Nephilim is probably the reason for the show to exist in the first place.
What's the most like mind-blowing thing that you've ever been told on your podcast?
It's hard to say because there's so many that I would say that,
Maybe top three.
Aliens live among us. I mean, and there's several races competing for one another. That the bloodlines going back to the Watchers of the Anunnaki still are running everything. I mean, that's the granddaddy of all conspiracies. I mean, obviously, all the ufology. The interesting thing, maybe this counts, maybe this is three, is how ufology and these same type of conspiracies we're talking about, sort of what you might call Christian paranormal or even pagan paranormal,
Mm-hmm.
they have now blended, and now it's a complete. There's one complete lane where it's the same, where the UFOs are actually demons or demons and angels, but the rest of it is the same. And honestly, that is the antecedents to 4chan and QAnon. I mean,
Okay.
those things is what those groups hung on to, and now it's mainstream. There are people saying, like, this whole like drinking baby's blood. This goes back in writing 5,000 or 6,000 years to the origins of writing these stories, and I'm sure older than that too. I mean, what's new is old. There's nothing new under the sun. Also from the Bible and from
Uh,
Egyptian mythology and all that. So
what is it? What is it called? The chrono something. The the baby eating the babies hydrochrome or something. Is that
oh,
what?
adrenochrome, yeah, which is,
Adrenochrome.
by the way, a term that a science fiction writer came up with, like, I think in the early 1900s. But yeah, I wasn't sure if you were going to Kronos, the Titan, and the Titanakame. I mean, there's a lot of hard words to pronounce in this world.
Mm. Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, I haven't done a ton of deep dives. Every once in a while, I'll try to get into a rabbit hole on YouTube and like try to learn a whole bunch of new um I love the idea to thinking about like I'll get stuck in like a Mandela effect uh, rabbit hole as well as getting stuck in like a time traveler's rabbit hole, like the like time travelers messages and stuff. I mean, a good amount of those seem like kind of a work, like just a bunch of BS, but uh, they're fun.
Sure, it's easy to promulgate things that are not unprovable. Time travelers, dimensional visitors, God, the Anunnaki. I mean, Planet 12, the way it is, has, the way that Sitchin described it, has pretty much been eliminated scientifically. But there is another planet out there in the solar system that's been all but confirmed. And one of my guests, George Mitrovic, said that he discovered it, in the 70s, and he does have evidence that he has. Whether he got lucky or it's the same, I couldn't tell you for sure. But it's not the first time. I've had Professor Robert Temple on, and he discovered plasma back in the 70s, and now it's recognized as the fourth state of matter. And I don't mean like like neutral blood
Mm-hmm.
they replace in the hospital. Now I thought it was dark matter, and somebody else told me yes it is, and then somebody else told me no, it's not dark matter, it's something else. And the somebody else is an astrobiologist, so they're probably right technically. But I wouldn't bet against Professor Temple in anything. He wrote the Serious Question or Mystery in 1976, which was a bestseller, sort of along the lines of von Daniken's Chariot of the Gods. So now, Professor Temple, if you're listening, you told me you were kin, and you said you were going to come back on the show, and you haven't, but you did get me Mark Booth, so that was a heck of a solid. So, who wrote the secret?
Good and the bad outweigh themselves
Yeah,
sometimes.
no. Mark Booth wrote The Secret History of the World, which he sort of tried to blend all of the esoteric traditions and mystery schools in not exactly a chronology, but in what the esoteric chronology would be. It's brilliant. It's a fantastic read. And it's on Audible. It was free on Audible, so I absolutely recommend it to anybody. I mean, if you're already paying for Audible, or you're just doing a 30-day trial, and you want a book that's not terribly long, I mean, like I said, that it's free. Don't use your 1 credit on a free book. Buy a book.
Well, I mean, a good amount of the stuff that's on Audible is also on Spotify. Maybe it would be available on that. What's the name of the
Yeah.
book again?
It's called The Secret History of the World. It's by Mark Booth, but some places it's published under, it's either John Black or Jack Black, which is his real name. He had to publish under Mark Booth, I think, in Europe, because I think there was already an author of the same name. But it's great, and even the narrator just speaks beautifully.
Mark Booth.
Mark Booth.
Yeah, it's on Spotify too.
Excellent. Listen, yeah,
I'm adding it to my list.
And he's writing a sequel. He's writing another book right now, and he said he asked if he could be on the show when he finished. I'm like, you don't need to write another book to come on this show, but yeah, absolutely. you had me at you had me at a low.
What are your theories from what you've gathered on alternate universes?
Okay. Other dimensions, I mean, other than like scientific, like Interstellar, break my brain. I don't like British science fiction. I hated the Flash movie. I hate what they're doing in the Marvel universe. Like, I could put up with the timelines for a little bit, and Loki season 1 was pretty good.
It was.
And the Spider-Man movie with that was good fan service. But that was enough. Now they got timelines, they got multiverses, whatever the hell was happening at the end of the Marvels. So my theory on it is I don't like it. I'm actually in the middle of reading the 3-body series. So I'm in book 3, called Death's End, and I literally just today got to a point where they encounter a bubble of 4th dimension space in 3-dimension space, and the force, the entity they meet in 4th dimensional space, says, you are but a thin piece of paper here. Nothing in 3-dimensional space can exist here for long, and nothing in 3-dimensional space can present a challenge to 4th dimensional space. My advice to you is that you leave immediately. So I think it's like that. I don't think that we have visitors from 4th dimensional space. I think or other dimensions, I think if they want to, they could see us just fine from where they are and not risk whatever contamination that is here. I also don't think that any kind of UFOs that travel through interstellar space need headlights or windows. So if there's lights or windows on it, it's probably not from another world.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that all the UFOs that have been spotted are from this planet?
I think most of them are military tech, and I think that a lot of that was planned so that other countries would know that shit's there. What their capabilities are, other than flying fast, and then I mean, the physics makes sense. We just don't have the technology, or do we? But I am extraordinarily open to the possibility that some are not to be like the Phoenix Lights. To me, that's very obviously was a super version of the B-52 bomber, the stealth B-50, maybe the biggest one ever made. Maybe it's too impractical. Maybe it's too slow. Maybe it's, was a prototype of, like the Shield helicarriers that they have, or something like that. Definitely was not a UFO. Most of the things that people see are Elon Musk launching Starlink satellites in clusters of 6 or 12 at a time. They
Mm.
look very much like UFOs, but I am I think that it's not only likely but probable. I think it's almost impossible that there's not other sophisticated life, and that based on where we are in this galaxy and how many galaxies there are, I'm sure that there are cultures and species that are hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, millions, maybe even billions years older than we are, and can do wonderful things. I don't think that they'd have much interest in us. I don't buy any of this. Well, we have nuclear weapons and now they're worried, and they're worried about what you're doing to your planet. No, no. I mean, stop trying to make it like, either this planet's special or it's not. And if it's special, it's unique. And if it's unique, nobody else was building giant spaceships that could go in interstellar, because they didn't have the conditions to get there. Anyway, those are my thoughts on it in brief. I could probably go on forever.
Jeff, do you think that humans landed on the moon?
I do.
Yeah.
I believe that they do. But I thought you asked me, do you believe that humans, that evolution was boosted by panspermia? And I also believe that, whether it's as benign as comets or asteroids hit the primordial stew and had certain microbes and things on it that what do you call it when you steal a car? Hot wire. Hot wired it. Or if it's something more like my friend Bruce Fenton believes, that like 800,000 years ago, that there was actually some engineering going on. And by the way, he makes a great case. There's an episode of Garden. It's one of the longer ones, so it's a bit of a listen. But if you're used to the sound of my voice now, maybe put on 1.5 or 1.75 speed. It's called 780,000 BC, and I'm not desperately trying to get someone to check out the show. But if you are interested in panspermia, like, I can't do justice to his body of work and evidence.
Can you give it like a real Reader's Digest for those, me included, that have never heard the word panspermia and don't know what that means?
So pan, as you know, is a cross.
Yeah.
Sperm is just exactly what it is. It's just, you think of sperm, it's to create life. And Ea is across the land. So panspermia is the theory that life on Earth or other places was created, or at least influenced by other worlds, whether again that was bacteria, viruses, microbes, elements that cause life in asteroids or comets that landed on the Earth. I mean, we have plenty of impact craters, or aliens, or the Anunnaki did tinker with hominids, and came out with the blackheads and and demigods and all. Those are both examples of panspermia. When Zeus came down as the form of a swan and banged abroad and came out with little Heracles or little Theseus, that's panspermia. When the sons of God, meaning the angels, the watchers, saw that the women, the daughters of Adam, were fair and took whatever wives pleased them, that's panspermia. Well, whether it's the source is divine or alien civilization, that's up to you. But the story is the same. As far as Bruce's is concerned, with basically 780,000 years ago, he points to that there's like 5 different kinds of genetic marker or genetic evolutions that took place in 200,000 years, and usually for any one of those to take place takes 200 million years. And he has other infinite information also. It's actually really intriguing stuff. Whether I don't have the credentials to support it or debunk it.
Feel free to not answer this question and tell me if you don't want. If you don't want to, that's fine. You can just say skip or whatever.
You got
it. Have you ever done mushrooms before?
Mushrooms? No. I have done hash, pot, and I did cocaine once in my life. Mushrooms? I don't think so. No LSD, no PCP, no crack, no heroin, no ecstasy. Big regret of my life once is not doing ecstasy in a particular situation. But no. The answer is no.
with all the information that you've got and all the stuff that you talk about, they're very mushroomy thoughts. They're very mushroom head, like mushroom mind sort of uh, ideas.
Hmm.
It sometimes when you're uncovering things or you're uh, talking about these theories or these almost like very factually, like they're real things. It's like if I was listening to you and I was on mushrooms, I would be like, whoa, like,
Well, that's what Book
oh,
of Black is. That's what it's supposed to
yeah,
do. And by the way, PJ is often stoned. What he's stoned on, I don't know. I don't ask. Um, but if you saw the Chic Massacre on YouTube, which is like a 25-minute movie that John Morrison, John Hennigan, Johnny Impact, Johnny Mundo, whatever, Taya, PJ, carrying, well, it was Killer Cross then because he's bald, Super Panda, and Nurse Brenda made, which is it's awful. It's terrible. It's awesomely shitty. It's so terrible. It's funny, and it's supposed to be. Uh, and so watch it by all means. But PJ's in there, basically smoking. At some point, he sees the little animated Chic doll, which is like Chucky, um, and he looks at his joint and he goes, "Whoa!" But have I been curious? I mean, do we talk about DMT and things like relate like ayahuasca and whatever?
right.
All the time it comes up. And I read the Immortality Key, and I've read, and heard all, how, all of the that all of the ancient shamans, and how the beer that was brewed, 10,000 to 7,000 years ago was way different than the beer that we're drinking now. And the wine that the Greeks were drinking, the Dionysian wine and whatever, is way different than the wine that we're drinking now. So I'm open to it, but I would want to do it with other people who want to do it and in a safe space. My wife is very much against that, even though she's South American, and you think that, since that's where ayahuasca comes from,
Well,
that
yeah.
she'd be down with it. But no, she's very pure body, and that's why she's 50 and looks like she's 30, and routinely is confused for her 25-year-old son's sister,
Mhm.
which, believe me, is of no pleasure to him.
I'm sure.
It's like Stacy's mom, like
Mhm.
forever.
Right.
You don't want to be Stacy's. You don't want to be Stacy in the song "Stacy's Mom."
Right. So, would you journey with ayahuasca?
I was told by somebody that you don't start with ayahuasca. You got to dose slowly, like Mithridates did, and build up a tolerance. I would dose with um, mushrooms or LSD, again, in a safe space with people who had done it before, who I trust.
Well,
I
yeah,
mean, I
yeah.
don't want to wake up. Listen, I'm a child of the '70s, and the '80s. So, like, believing that you're going to wake up in a bathtub full of ice with your kidneys removed is like a real fear.
Okay, that must have been why they put it in Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back when he woke up in the tub of ice.
Hmm. Yeah, that was the thing. That was an urban legend. Like growing up the way I grew up, like quicksand, rattlesnakes, pumas, and like organs being stolen from you. Like, you would think those were like the like, I was more afraid of those things than I was of nuclear war with the Soviets.
Yeah, John Mulaney had a bit about how he thought quicksand was going to be a way bigger thing in his life. Do you remember that bit?
I, I
He's
don't
a,
know John Mulaney is, but I mean, it's the same thing. I mean,
he's a stand-up
Adam
comedian.
West
Yeah.
Batman, quicksand, The Land of Lost,
Mhm.
quicksand, the Lone Ranger, quicksand, every freaking cowboy movie, quicksand. I mean, it was everywhere. Tarzan, quicksand,
Mhm.
terrifying.
And it was slow.
Yeah,
Quicksand is not a good name for it.
yeah, no, exactly right. You're right. It's shitty branding. It's like MapQuest. Like,
Right.
everyone reads the map. Nobody bothers to think about Quest. It's like fraught with peril and danger.
Yeah. Map journey, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Map. Don't forget your sword, and your cloak of invisibility.
Right.
Like, some dungeon master made that thing for you. He's like, you have to cross this body of water without a bridge. It says Quest.
Dude. Printing up directions on MapQuest
The worst.
was a thing that we used to do.
Yeah, like
Oh man,
15 years ago.
and then have to read it off the paper while you're driving.
Hmm.
Oh man, I can't believe we did that.
That's
Like
exactly
it's
right.
almost like technology jumps so far ahead so quickly, and like already you forgot that you lived without that thing. Like I
Mhm.
didn't have a cell phone my whole childhood. Like I that
Right,
that didn't exist yet.
right. I mean, in the 80s, Michael, what was his name? Michael Douglas had that giant thing in Wall Street. I mean, I know
Mhm.
a few people who had that phone, but most people, I knew some people who had it in their cars. You could always see because they had like the boomerang antenna on the top of
Right.
their car. I mean, it was craziness. But yeah, I mean, cell phones became sort of like Nokia, Motorola, sort of like maybe the 90s, and sort of became like, everybody had one.
Mhm. And phones have changed so much. Like what I had we just had like a flip phone
Mhm.
back in the day. Now like you can do pretty much everything and anything on your phone that you
Yeah.
could do on any other thing.
Well,
Like
what's the thing you do least with it is use it as a phone.
right, exactly. You couldn't watch YouTube on your flip phone.
No, 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 no. I remember I played Brick Breaker. I got like 37,000 on Brick Breaker. I was like so addicted.
Snake, man. Snake was the go-to
There you go.
for everyone.
Yeah, Tetris was big also. After my Brick Breaker addiction, I realized I had to just draw a hard line on those things.
Mhm. Had to take a brick breaker and break.
Yeah, all video games. I did fall into Splinter Cell, and I wasn't aware that when you won it, you like it never occurred. Like we didn't have games that you won. So at the end, when I won, the game was over. I'm like sitting there going, "Don't I just like have to do it again faster or something?" That was just over. I'm just like, I mean, it's satisfying, but sort of sucks.
I have beaten maybe two video games in my life. I'm not a good gamer. Like I'm just very bad at games. And it makes me go to the point where I'm like, if I've lost this enough times, I'm just gonna stop. Like it's not productive. I'm just wasting my time that I could be using to do something that's productive.
Yeah. My kids used to destroy me in the WW video game. I mean, my 4-year-old when he was, I mean, he's not 4 now, but when he was 4, like he knew all the cheats like immediately. And like I the bell starts and he's just putting like finisher after finisher on me. It's like doesn't even let me get up. I'm like, let me get up. And he's like, okay, I'll let you get up. And he lied. And then there's also something in the pedigree. It's
Well,
like
well,
he's like,
yeah, because that makes you laugh when you tell people, "Okay, I'll give you a break," and then you don't give them a break.
right.
It,
Well,
it's
the kids are
it's a
the worst.
contagious
And but I'm
laughter.
like, oh, he's so my kid. But in Halo, in space, that I could do because I've been trained all my life to play those games. But on the ground, like they're driving away and like I'm running in a circle. They're like, "Get over here, you useless! You can't shoot anyone if you're not on the screen." I'm like, "Come pick me up." Um, Now on Lego Star Wars though, they were a little bit impulsive on blowing things up, and they were you had to do things in certain order to get to the right character to climb up things to get some of those batteries. So I'm still mad about like the 3 or 4 batteries that we did. One I know I figured out how to get it. One I still haven't figured it out, but and probably never will then. But like I said, I Splinter Cell is the only video game I've ever won, and that's it.
Yeah, I was really into the Arkham games, the Batman Arkham games.
I
Uh,
tried the arcade game, well, one of them, and I couldn't get past the first 4 guys. I'm like, fuck this.
yeah, I forget. It might have been Arkham City. I got to the Mister Freeze level, and I I kept losing a whole bunch of times, and I was like, all right, this is already I'm wasted too much time on this. And I even looked up how to beat him on YouTube, and I couldn't master it, and I was like, all right, not for me. I
Yeah,
guess video games aren't my thing.
yeah, you did better. I couldn't get past the first 4 guys in the garage.
Mhm.
I mean, you walk out of the elevator room, open the door, and there's 4 guys with hats. They're like the jabronis, and I'm Batman, and I'm like not landing any blows. So video games are really not for me.
Jabronis,
Yeah,
video game jabronis.
But you know what video games are good for? For escape rooms. Because when you realize that like everything in a room in a video game is there for a reason,
Right.
it's really good training for like when you do like team escape room things.
Yeah. Yeah. I, there are some puzzly type of video games that like I get a lot of pleasure out of mastering, but I just can't commit to using up all my time for it.
I can't anymore. But when I was young, what was the ripoff Doom? It was like the same game.
Wolfenstein?
No, not Wolfenstein. I remember Wolfenstein from the Commodore days, but no. Um, Duke Nukem. Okay,
Oh,
so
Duke Nukem. Yeah, and
oh,
he did like he did like Bruce Campbell like one-liners.
yeah, and that was one of those where like you had to look everywhere. And I mean, by looking, you broke a lamp, you shot the every door or whatever, and sometimes it was a good idea. But like I swear, one day, like this is my first wife. She rented the game for me for like a week, and I don't think I left the basement for a week. Like I'm not sure if I ate. We had a bathroom down there, was finished. So I mean, I started on Sunday. I looked at the clock and it was Thursday, and and she's like, "You need to come upstairs." I'm like, "No, I don't."
It's a real time suck. Dude, I remember I think I was like in sixth grade when that game came out. I didn't play it a lot. I went over to my friend's house. He had it and he played it a lot. And I was like, yeah, I can't get hooked to this. I just my attention, my attention span isn't big enough for me to be able to just focus on. That's why I never read comic books. I don't really read books that often, just because I get distracted so quickly, and I just completely forget why I started doing the thing in the first place.
I understand. I mean, there's a pro and con to everything. I mean, my Duke Nukem story is a con. That's not a good thing. That's not a brag. So it's probably better off. Anyway, with Audible and Spotify and things like that, you don't really have to read books anymore. You can listen as long as you can focus. It's better than nothing.
So, a question I ask pretty often um, uh, would be,
Mhm.
with all the knowledge that you've got and all the people that you've known that have passed on, what do you think happens to people when they die?
This is going to be a very unsexy answer. I mean, I do think that there is energy that leaves the body in the form of matter. Do I think it's a soul? Not necessarily. Is there possibly it carries our DNA? So maybe close enough. Yes, but I think basically, it's supposed to be ashes to ashes, dust to dust. And I think that cemeteries are an enormous waste of real estate. And if we're going to populate this earth to the size that we should, at least nourish the earth in our death instead of putting ourselves in suits and then like triple line boxes of wood and concrete and things like that, and just and nourish the earth, and in 10 billion years or whatever, or 500 million years will be the fossil fuel for the new Atlanteans.
Okay. What's your theory on ghosts?
um this is going to be terribly inconsistent with all of my other answers. I sort of believe in ghosts. I think that there is. I think that there are some times when whatever that is, that energy that leaves the body that apparently has been measured at like 14 kilograms. I think sometimes there are anomalies when more of it stays behind and stays together. And uh, and I have a little theory that it's not limited to humans, which is what a lot of cryptids are. That we're seeing like a megafauna that had some sort of trauma and is still haunting a cavern or a canyon somewhere, and
Mhm.
that's you're seeing a ghost of a dire wolf and you think it's a werewolf, or you're seeing a gigantopithecus and you think it's a Bigfoot,
Mhm.
or a Neanderthal and you think it's a ogre or whatever. But yeah, and the only reason I say this is because I've not seen a ghost, but I've experienced it in the weirdest way
That
possible.
was the next question I was about to ask you. I was going to ask if you had a story
I
that
do.
backed up maybe some personal experience with ghosts or. Uh,
Yeah, I do. And this is okay. This is as an adult. So my oldest, who you've heard, is 24. He was still in a crib, so he was definitely no older than 3. Could talk a little bit, like could say sentences, but young child sentences. So probably a year and a half to 2 and a quarter, something like that. So we're going back to probably 2003 ish. Again, with my first wife. Um, so I don't know if people still have baby monitors, but we had a baby monitor, and the baby monitor is basically it's like a it's like a walkie-talkie. You can hear what's going on in the other room, and and every now and then it picks up static or something from something else. So you get you can hear what the baby is saying, or if they're crying or whatever. One night so one night I'm having a dream about one of my grandfathers, my maternal grandfather, who died like in 1984. Um, so my maternal grandmother was alive until my oldest was 4 years old. So she met both of my kids, but they don't remember now. But they knew her then. But they called her Gigi. They barely understood English. I don't think she ever talked about her husband, and certainly not that I called him Poppy. Um, and they called my father grandpa, and they called their other grandfather pop pop. So the only reason I say this is because I had a dream about my grandfather night, and then the baby monitor goes crazy staticky, and I know that's not part of my dream because my now ex-wife, my then wife, woke up, and it didn't just go it went like when you see in the movies where like the radiation detector also on spikes,
mhm.
it was like that, and we both got up and ran into his room, which I mean it's 20 feet, and he's standing, in the crib, holding his blankie, big smile on his face, and I'm like, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" He goes, "Yeah, I'm great." It's like, "Why are you great?" He's like, "Because Poppy came by and he just wanted to say how great it was to see how good I'm doing, and that he wanted to make sure." I'm like, "Poppy?" You're like, "Yeah, your grandfather." I'm like, "Or your grandpa." I'm like,
Mhm.
how'd you know that?" And he's like, "He told me." And that was it. I mean, what else conversation you have with a 2-year-old? But that
Right.
was the end. I mean, so I had the dream. The static thing happened. It woke up my wife too, and we both ran in there because we both heard it. Like if if I woke it up and if I woke up from the dream and woke her up, like we wouldn't have run into the room because she wouldn't have. She would have been like, "No, dude, that was your dream. There's nothing wrong with No, she heard it too. So we both went in there, and he used the word popping because he just wanted to make sure that I was doing okay, and he was glad that I was, and I guess then he moved on, and that was it. But I mean, it defies any sort of explanation, so it has to be a ghost.
Yeah. Uh, did you ever see the movie White Noise with Michael Keaton?
Yeah.
That movie sucked. I don't remember any of it, but I remember thinking this like walkie-talkie stuff would happen. Electric sound, whatever. What was it? EMF? What? Not EMF. Phenomenon. Electric sound phenomenon or something like that.
Well, I think we know what you're saying. They're trying to say.
Yeah,
I don't know what the right term is, but yeah, you're right. I wasn't expecting you to go with that movie sucked, but you're absolutely right. That's why I laughed. But it did suck.
yeah. I mean, I went. My brother and I went to go see that in the movie theater, and we walked out. We were like, Jesus.
Yeah, I mean, actually, a lot of people thought that was the end of Michael Keaton's career. I mean, now he's a legend. But
Right. Well, that's when you said that you thought the Flash sucked. I was like, I thought it was all right. Like you said, like almost like the fan service of it all. Like I thought it was cool to like see Michael Keaton play Batman again.
yeah, I know people like that, and they like see Nicolas Cage and Superman, and sort of like Deadpool with the cavalry and all that. Um, Let me be clear to your audience about this. I think a lot of things suck or are bad that a lot of people think are good. I'm really, really persnickety about my media, which makes it extremely bizarre that I that I've been watching professional wrestling for about 50 years now, because it's like the lowest brow entertainment there is. But maybe that's what it is. It's my mac and cheese.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's so funny because like I see it on both sides of the barricade, you know what I mean? As far as like being an in-ring performer and like telling the stories and stuff, and how like cheesy it is, how cheesy every other piece of content that we consume is, like movies and stuff. And it's I do see where you're coming from as far as like the you feel like sort of a, I don't want to say hypocrite, but adjacent, uh to go like, well, I think like I have a weird taste in things, but I also enjoy this and perform in this, and you know, have made my name, and my whole life has been because of this really cheesy thing.
Yeah, I also don't want anyone to have the misimpression. I actually think that being a professional wrestler might have the most unique and hardest different sets of skills anywhere. And I'm not bullshit. I mean, one, you have to be athletic and rhythmic. You have to be strong to a certain extent. You have to, you have to be coordinated. You have to be able to act and emote. You have to know when to interact with the crowd, but you also have to be able to ignore them. So it's like interactive theater. You have to know how to work the cameras and where the cameras are, but you also have to know when to ignore the cameras. I mean, there's as much of it is not in the ring as is in the ring. So you have to know where the story is. You have to keep the time in your head. I mean, I know that there's the ref and other people help, but there's not like a whole coaching staff there. So I think it's an enormous amount of skill sets, and I very much believe the people who get to the top have just, I mean, they're like, quarterbacks. They have a, you can say dumb football player. Oh yeah, try to remember 77 different plays and the variations of them, and tell me
Right.
that they're stupid. But as far as from a storytelling perspective, I mean, listen, I I sort of, I'm like you. Soup is one of my favorite wrestling podcasts, obviously. Um, and and they sort of made fun of when wrestlers start talking about it as their art. But it's not just that. It's most of the I don't know a whole lot of professional wrestlers. I mean, even the people I've met on Book of Black or whatever, I don't know them. Some of them I have relationships with or whatever. I mean, a couple of them have turned into cyber friends, but for the most part, they're on a show. That's it. That's the end of it. But like the ones that, well, I've already said names, but the three male guys that I talked to, I haven't talked to LuFisto this deeply about it yet. But they're all the same. They're all like, yeah, this is fun. It's like the people say it's art. That's goofy. Okay, it's fine, whatever. But we sort of laugh at them. And so my and Mr. Thomas is someone who was introduced to me to it. He's the only guest that I book. So it's not like it's all of PJ's friends think the same. So they don't take themselves so seriously. They're not like, I mean, I don't want to. Yes, I do. Like the all elite founders, the guys. This is art. They're not. I haven't been exposed to those kinds of wrestlers, and like, and whatever you think subjectively, I'm generally okay with whatever you feel subjectively. That's opinion. It's like when you get all preachy and dogmatic about it and obnoxious about it, that.
Right.
That's when I turn evil.
What's weird to me, and I don't know if I've said this very publicly, but um, it's like elite to me. The word it means like privileged elite,
Mhm.
and that is not what wrestling fans are. That's not what, like, they. How do they relate to that? Like, and like if part of my opinion on AEW is a ton of like your marketing sucks. Your I mean, it's not the worst, but it's not good at all.
Well, it's
But
pretty much the worst if you compare it to the amount of resources they have
right,
available to them. But
exactly.
but
Yeah.
I know what you're saying.
Like I have said this very publicly, saying like when they go, oh, if every indie promotion has ever said, oh, if we only had $1 billion, $1 zillion. Imagine what we could do production wise. Imagine what we could do this wise and that wise. You guys have that. You guys have the TV. Every promotion I've ever worked for is like, oh, if we're getting TV and we're gonna get once we get TV, everything's gonna be great. Like those false promises, like we hear those on the independent level tons, but
Mhm.
then this whole thing is doing that, and like it's kind of like a cult. You know what I mean?
False savior.
Right? Yeah. It's
But
became.
he's doing enough of the savior things. He's keeping on TV. He's employing 300 wrestlers. Probably another 75 other talent and employees, and then there's ancillary. There's enhancement talent. There's hotels. There's the guys who drive the production trucks. I mean, there's all that ancillary economy as well. So in some ways, he is a savior. Yeah, I mean, Shelton Benjamin gets released for
Oh yeah.
reasons I don't quite understand. I mean, I understand he's 48, but I wouldn't release Shelton Benjamin.
No,
Apparently, he
no.
was offered an agent position. He's like, I still have things to give, so I want to. Would he have done that if there was only TNA, NWA, and MLW? Probably not. I mean, he probably would have taken the agent gig. And he says he's making, or someone reported he's making $2.5 million. Is he? I don't know. Is it so hard to believe? No, because this guy throws around money like water, because it is water to him. And people like get angry at me when I say that they're losing money. It's like, but they never listen to the other part. They're like, well, first of all, how do you know? I'm like, because I can do math, and I can tell you, as someone who owned a business and knows other business owners, that everything costs more than you think it is. Everything costs more than you think it does. There's whatever you think something's going to cost, add 15% of it across the board, and you might be close to right. But in any event, it's like I even like where was I starting when I got myself sidetracked?
Talking about how Tony Khan's a savior
All
because
right, yeah.
because
So
he
yeah, he's
saved
just
the business for I guess like when more of the boys are working. This is the weirdest thing. Like, and I've had like fans who are the all elite wrestling fanboy people like go like, why do you want it to do so good? Why do you want it to do so like what's in it for you? And I'm like, well, when the business grows and the business gets better, it's better for everybody. Like
right,
independent wrestling, when popularity of pro wrestling is up, it's good for houses. It's good for paydays. It's good for the crowd reactions. I
right,
and like it's strange. You'd think that with all the resources that they have, they'd be drawing sellout houses everywhere.
right. And you know where I was going with it? I recovered my thought. It's like I, if people just acknowledge this is a hobby, and yeah, he's probably losing money, but it doesn't matter. He's getting enough back, and I would say I agree. Even if he's losing 100% of the money, which he's not, there's revenue. No one's denying
Mhm.
that. Even even if he's losing $150 million a year, the man was worth $1.5 billion before. That's not even including whatever's in his father's name and his sister's name and things like
Mhm.
that. And the second the Jacksonville Jaguars got that new government finance stadium for the Jaguars, his net worth just went up $250 million by breathing. When the Cowboys got valued at $11 billion, his value just went up another $80 million just by breathing, or more.
Right.
So if someone said to me, listen, he's just spending 5 or 10% of his revenue. That's probably just interest on his other money on his hobby. How much do you spend on your hobby? I'd be like, you're damn right. What pissed me off goes, they're making tons of money. They're a giant success. No, they're not. But they don't need to be. So just go with they don't need to be, and stop pretending. Like even this $185 million or whatever it is, even with all the other streams of income, I still think that it might be a break-even proposition. And then you have Meltzer saying they're going to be extremely profitable. Please explain to me how that works. Let's just be conservative and say $100 million investment, which Tony has said has never been recouped, never been paid back, and let's just say the losses over the last 5.5 years total another $250 million. I think that's rather conservative. So $350 million. let's assume they are very profitable. They're going to make $50 million a year in profit going forward, as of January 1st going forward. You still have to make profit. You still have to make $50 million a year profit for the next 7 years to recoup your investment, and then continue for your ongoing to be a profitable company, not a cash flow positive company. There's a difference between something being profitable on an ongoing basis and actually being a profit. And I think Meltzer knows the difference and just doesn't say it, but I know wrestling fans don't know the difference.
Well, I think Meltzer is already so invested in the appearance of success for AEW and Tony Khan that he's just doubling down constantly.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right. And people think that he owns a bit of the business. I don't, but I wouldn't be surprised that, that everybody who works for AEW gets a subscription paid by Tony Khan. I wouldn't be surprised if everybody from AEW doesn't have a highest tier Patreon paid to the Online Observer, not paid by them. And I'm sure that the tickets and the suites and all of the events are comped, including food and things like that. So there's lots of ways to get paid without getting paid.
Right. Yeah, there's and I've heard this opinion given a lot. Dave Meltzer's never been in a ring before, and like he doesn't have experience at this. Like he's just been a fan of it all this time, and now he's like this. I've said this to Lou a few times. Have you ever seen that video where like he's next to the ring and the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega are in the ring and he's like, and he's like having a little panic attack, like a little teenage girl seeing a boy band?
Right. Like Taylor Swift just said hello to her. Yeah.
Right. That's not a credible wrestling reporter. That's not an impartial news source for pro wrestling. Because what they're doing, I'm not gonna say it's not pro wrestling, but it's certainly something else. Like there's pro wrestling elements in it, but it's like it's like a stunt show at a theme park more than it is like a pro wrestling match.
I mean, I agree, and since they're constantly changing their directions and allow the wrestlers dictate their own stories, it's not even internally consistent. So so if it was just all Fast and Furious cars crashing and flying, that would be one thing. But it's like all over the place, and there's no continuity. So. And then when they try to do continuity and it doesn't yield immediate successes, then they drop it. And so the only consistent thing is inconsistency. So, and dangerous stuff. So, I don't know. I feel like I spend way too much time thinking about AEW. I mean, people impute emotion to it. They're like, cope or stop crying. It's like, dude, it's really not that upsetting to me. It's like an easy diversion. It's like there's like far more important things to think about, like wars, but at least wrestling's rather harmless. I mean, worst case scenario is a really rich guy is wasting a lot of money and his father and sister are keeping him away from the real businesses.
Right.
It ain't so bad.
Keep distracted with the whole wrestling thing. Go ahead.
That's right. I mean, I say sort of pejoratively, not sort of completely, that the money that his father put into it, and if there's any ongoing, I don't think his father needs to put ongoing money. I think the guy has enough money on his own, Tony. But whatever it is, it's keep my idiot son away from the real business's insurance. And that's the best money ever spent.
What legally do you see a reality where like pro wrestlers will ever be seen as anything but independent contractors, 1099?
Well, not now with this administration and especially cabinet official. I have no idea how WWE has survived this long. Those people are absolutely employees. People are like, but they can do other things. So can I. I mean, I have a full-time job. I can get a job as a waiter. I can write a book. I can do podcasts, by the way, I do. I mean, I can do other things. I could sell insurance. I just can't have a conflict of interest. Being able to do other things isn't the definition of independent contractor. It's the amount of control. And WWE exercises way more control over his people does than my employers ever would, uh, or my former employer, in which case I was actually a principal, and more than we would ever impose upon those employees then. And I think that AEW crossed that lines at a certain point with some of the wrestlers, now with some of them. So I think AEW is also that. As far as others are concerned, I don't really know enough about TNA and NWA and MLW, but I suspect that most of those are enough on the other side that they are independent contractors. So I don't think it wouldn't be industry wide. It would be case by case specific. I absolutely think that they're misclassified. I don't know why the world doesn't care enough about it, but I will say one thing. One of the reasons is because the wrestlers don't want it to be, because they know that that the people at the top, they're going to get a lot less money because the cost of business is going to be more expensive. And the one thing that's going to happen is overnight there will be 40% less pro wrestlers employed, and probably over the course of the next 18 months there'd be another 12 or 15% less wrestlers, meaning there'd be less than, you'd have 40 or 45% of whatever the current volume is, in the big time wrestling doing it. And there's not enough room for those people in the indies. Or if all of a sudden you get, I'm picking someone at random, someone who's, let's say Apollo Crews, who's not exactly thriving in WWE's there. All of a sudden he's in the indies. He's not taking $125 a night, but he probably can't demand the $7,000 he wants. But maybe he's worth $1,250, 1,000, $1,250. But that means that four other indie guys are either getting paid less or not being paid or not on the card at all. So it would have a deleterious effect. But they know that. But every wrestler can apply to be a member of SAG. Being in the guild or the union isn't the issue. The thing is that the employers have to be required to use the union contract. So getting in the union isn't an issue. I mean, you could apply today. Whether you have enough credits to do it or not, I don't know, but you probably could. You book yourself 3 commercials. Not that so easy, but I mean, a lot of wrestlers.
It's not very easy.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
of
to
course
get getting waivers as an actor or at all is getting waivered on set isn't always offered.
No, I'm sure that you're correct, but I mean, obviously, if it was easy to be an actor, everyone would be an actor. But a lot of pro wrestlers do it. I mean, a lot of them are stunt people and stunt coordinators and body doubles and things, and those all count to the credit. I mean, Frankie Kazarian's been a member of SAG for 20 years. I mean, he's not exactly a big name. He's been around. Super Panda is in the unions. I know tons of, obviously Hennigan is, I mean,
Yeah.
so, you sort of have a leg up when you're especially in the bigger wrestling, because some of those skill sets, how to work a camera, how to ignore a camera, your head stays still when you talk. I mean, if you've ever done things, like me, when I talk, my head moves, people talk with their hands, newscasters don't. They stay still. That's a skill. People say, they're being paid to do nothing, just talk. Nah, it ain't that easy to have a light in your eye and talk with emotion and pronounce things correctly and not have your eyes flitting all over the place and your head moving and your body moving. There's a reason these things get paid more than, say, working at Walmart. So I'm not trying to disrespect or say anything that's easy, but the main point of it is that anyone can apply for SAG membership. The biggest impediment is that nobody in wrestling uses the SAG contracts. Maybe WoW does, because that's more of a TV show.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe Lucha Underground did, but I don't know. I mean, King Cuerno's suit, I think, said otherwise. Now Santos Escobar, or maybe always Santos Escobar. I don't know. By the way, I'm hearing that Freddie Prinze Jr. might be trying to bring a show together that. But he's been talking about doing a wrestling promotion for 15 years now. So
yeah, I've been hearing about that for years.
Yeah, but I mean, while I absolutely think that WWE and probably AEW are misclassified, not sure about the others, but I don't think it would have the great effect on the industry that people are. There'd be negative side effects I don't think people are expecting. On the pro, they'd have health insurance for non-injury related things, and there's a little bit of disparate information in there on what event insurance covers or doesn't cover, and whether AEW's covers as much as WWE's or whatever. And I don't know enough about. I've heard both things. I if you ever listen to Duke and Devon show, Devon will tell you how good WWE's been to him. I've heard people say AEW's been terrific to them. I've heard people say AEW that they didn't pay attention to me at all. But then I also heard Keith Lee say that the WWE didn't pay his bills. And they said, produce your receipts, and they didn't. But maybe they kept it confidential. I mean, who knows? We'll see. Anyway, really long way of saying, yeah, I do. I ever think I see a day if it got analyzed in any court of law under state's tests or the IRS tests, WWE and probably AEW would flunk it for the vast majority of their talent.
Mm. All right.
Stephen New agrees. I know that much.
Yeah. So around this time, I like to start to wrap it up, right? And what we do in sort of the wrap up is I just got a couple more things for you, and then I'll send you off to the sunset with a hot dog and a handshake. Wrap it up. So the way I begin doing that is I'll ask you now, and I'll segment this a little bit, but first I'll give this right to you and ask you if there's anything on the record that you'd like to know, or you'd like to ask me or tell me, just while we're on the record. Like I said, I like to keep timelines of all this. I like to keep everything like a time capsule for me. So if there's anything you wanted to say, I want to say to you right before I pass it to you to say anything, how psyched I am that we're building this relationship. This is just the beginning, and I'm psyched for this being like the first like long conversation that we're having, and I hope to do it again. I hope to join you and be a guest on your show, and let's just continue to have fun. I haven't for sure haven't jumped in with as many puns and jokes as I normally do, but I'm very fascinated by everything you're talking about. So I'm laying back. So
well, next
at
time I'll
this
do
point,
worse or better.
yeah, do worse next time.
Yeah. I'll talk less. No, I mean, I am curious. Like, where do you do most of your wrestling? Like, what promotions do you work for most of the time?
I'm at this point. I'm on a little bit of a break, probably for the rest of the year. I mean, we're in November, so
Yeah, that's
so
6 weeks or 5 weeks. Yeah.
for the rest of the year, I'm just laying back. I'm taking a break,
Mm-hmm.
but I mostly work these days. There's a company in York, PA that I work for called Valor Pro Wrestling. There's another company in Lebanon, PA called CCW that I've been working for. I do a couple conventions for cosplay pro wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
So they do some independent shows that are based around cosplay. Like
Sure.
different like comic book characters and video game characters and stuff like that. So nothing too major.
What about
Nothing.
isn't AXW out of Hamburg or
Yeah,
Hanover?
they're in Hamburg. I worked there when they were owned by the previous owners.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I I know I don't have any relation with the people that are running it now.
Oh.
So I mean, I'm not close to the idea, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I'm popular to those guys. I don't think they think I'm popular enough.
Who, Antonio and Jared? I mean, I have no idea. I mean, you might be right, but I have no idea. But I mean, I went to one of their shows, and a friend of mine who they were vendors there, but he was also like playing Mr. America at the show also. So he was sort of part of the show, but I think they just, didn't have to pay for their vending booth. They were calling some Dollar Club Wrestling. Anyway, I mean, any of the wrestlers that were of note were sponsored. Like I sponsored John Schuyler, who I think was working for Impact at the time. I think was still Impact then.
Right.
Lady Frost and Deanna Peraza were there, but they weren't wrestling. And Lady Frost was with her husband, Victor Benjamin, the Savage Gentleman. He wasn't wrestling. I recognize Kiko. I think that's what he goes by, who from Maryland Championship Wrestling. But I don't know.
Are you talking about Keikoa?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, that's who I wrestled when I was there. I wrestled with Keikoa just a couple of times when I was there. But I think,
and then who's the guy who used to do Alberto Del Rio's announcing?
Roberto Rodriguez. Yeah,
Yeah, he was there, and he said he was starting a promotion in Lancaster.
yeah, he has 7 mountains, I think it's called. There three mountains. I don't know. It's something mountain. I don't mean to be disrespectful. I don't know what it's called, but I know he has a promotion in a school.
No CZW, no Combat Zone.
I work with them very little. Like I go and train with their students sometimes, and not to, I mean, like,
you're not that far from me. That's the whole point. You're not that far. I'd come out and see you. There's Adrenaline. There's a promotion out of Hagerstown. There's a MLW tapes out of Philly.
My last match I had was in Delaware. I did a show in Georgetown, Delaware, so that's not too far from you, I don't think.
No, them boys.
So yeah, exactly. It was right in their hood. Yeah, right in their hood. And one of like Jay's, I guess, really good friends was there and just kept talking about how Jay saved his life, and it was some touching stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a tragedy. That was a real tragedy.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah,
In an industry full of tragedies, that's a tragedy. But like, I don't want to rate tragedies, but it was literally just a car accident. It wasn't like somebody was drunk or stoned or had a likely steroid induced heart attack or anything. It was just like the sun went into someone's eyes and they drifted into a lane, and I mean, it's horrible, but it was just an accident. I mean, there's nothing criminal was involved.
Nothing malicious, nothing,
Right.
Nothing that like could have been prevented.
Right. Exactly.
Right.
I
wrestled the Briscoes once. Me and my old partner Matt Bomboy, we wrestled the Briscoes once. We had a real fun match with those guys.
How could you not?
It's up on my YouTube channel if you want to check it. I mean, we were very young, young.
Redneck Kung Fu.
Right.
You can't beat that. There's no defense. No defense, right? No, I don't have any questions. I mean, I came in prepared to be a guest. I wasn't even sure what we were talking about, which is fine because obviously I can, babble about pretty much anything. But like, I didn't have any questions for you. But yeah, no, I mean, I would love to have you and your partner and whatever, on the Book of Black. I just have to wrangle PJ or one of the others onto the show also, because nobody wants to listen to just me talking to wrestlers. That much is sure.
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, that sounds sure.
Yeah, and I don't.
No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. You definitely have an expertise and you have a perspective that I think that you're talking about pro wrestling from an aspect of like you're a fan smarter to both ends of it. Yeah. And the third legal side that we don't consider.
Yeah, I like the business. I find the business of pro wrestling never-endingly fascinating. People always ask, "Why do you care about this and this?" I'm like, because I'm more interested in the business of pro wrestling than pro wrestling itself. I mean, I don't know what to tell you, but it's like such a small local business, but it's in the billions. It makes no sense. It exists in. We were talking about universes and dimensions. It exists in a dimension all to itself.
It really is I tried to use this word earlier, talking about the cult of it, but it's definitely like exists in like an echo chamber. Like it's its own culture, it's its own vibe that outside of it, people just don't understand it, and like
No,
they
they
can't.
don't. No, I hear people reference wrestling all the time, and they're still talking about Hulk Hogan and Macho Man Randy Savage. God bless him. By the way, I have 1 degree separation story about Lanny Poffo, Randy's brother, but I'm not going to tell it today. That'll be a next conversation. It's good though.
I I uh, I have some experiences with Lanny. I knew him.
Okay, we can say I didn't really know him. My
Mhm.
wife, however, knew him
Okay.
right up until like the day before his death. I
Mm.
actually often say that she might have killed him,
Oh, well,
but
how was
I
that?
don't want to spoil the story. I'll spoil the story.
You gotta. You you laid it out.
Okay, so
So could you
somewhere,
please
yeah.
not leave us
So
hanging?
because I'm a stupid mark, and learned that Lanny Poffo moved to Ecuador, uh, I said to my wife, "Hey, you should reach out to him and tell him about Ecuador." So he just moved there. He probably could use some local guidance so he doesn't get scammed or whatever. So she reached out to him. Mind you, I was friends with him on Facebook, but that doesn't mean anything. I don't think he knew my name or anything like that. But he got right back to her because I mean I
Mhm,
don't I do mean to brag. My wife is super hot and she's way
mhm,
hotter than me. Like that it's so absurd in the sentence just there because I'm not hot. I'm like regular.
mhm,
Um,
mhm,
and so they ended up doing like an hour-long YouTube video on what was her channel. She since took it down, so I don't know if you can find it anywhere. But it was an interview, and she go having fun with Lanny Poffo. And so she's talking to him about Ecuador, and he's basically hitting on her the whole time. But she doesn't understand half the words he's saying. He doesn't understand half the things she's saying. But it goes on for an hour. Then from then on, he's texting her, he's calling her like almost every other day. So this goes on for a couple of years, and I'm encouraging it because like it's completely trustworthy, and of course it's
'cause of
Lanny Poffo.
Markness.
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out how I can use this in some way to become friends with Lanny Poffo without
Mhm,
like offering my wife to him. And I'm not coming with answers, but I'm not ready to give up.
mhm,
Um, so anyway, he's in New York. And the next day, he's going to be in Westminster, Maryland, which is just 30 minutes up the road at a WrestleCon. And
mhm,
he invites, I mean, there were numerous times he invited her to Ecuador. He was going to pay her way and whatever. And she would always say no. And this is like, he's like, okay, well, come visit me at the Wrestle conference. She's like, well, can I come with my fiance? And he goes, no, just you. And she's like, no. Um, and then he died the next day of a heart attack. So, I mean,
rejection.
I
Died of
think
a
he died.
broken heart.
I think he died of a broken heart. Exactly right.
Mhm.
But he called a lot. Like he called like more than once a week. I mean, he was calling like all the time.
Was a weird guy, man.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, dude, we had him as we had us as a guest on Wrestle Rock. I used to host a pro wrestling podcast with a couple of my best friends. We just sit around and talk about wrestling. We had
Sure.
Lanny joined us as a guest once, and he didn't want to answer any of the questions. Like we were asking him questions, he was like, "Yeah, I'm not in the mood to talk about that. I'm not here to talk about that." Like, and it was very weird. And then he did this excuse and he said, "Oh, do you hear that ambulance? I got to get out of here. Bye." And he hung right up. And then we were like, "What?" They hear an ambulance, like he heard sirens. You guys hear those sirens? I got to get out of here. And then we acted like he had to go stop a crime because there was ambulances. So then we just kept calling him Vigilante Poffo, and that became the name of the episode.
That's good.
We made fun of him for a
That,
while.
that's almost as good as Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's good. No, he was a weird guy. I mean, sort of like everybody. I mean, Randy was a weird guy. Like Randy was like weirdly intense, like sort of like dangerous, like whether he was or wasn't, everyone always felt like he was like dangerously on cocaine all the time. You know, there's some people that are just intense and scary. Lanny was just weird. I don't know if he was scary, but he's a big. I mean, he was a lot bigger than his brother.
We, um, this is over 10 years ago now. Me and my now brother-in-law, we were making a pro wrestling documentary where we took a trip down to Florida. We went to Tugboat. Actually, owned this hotel. Him and his wife were running this like motel,
Great,
right in Clearwater. And we went there, and Fred Ottman gave us a room. He gave us free rooms
nice.
so we stayed there. We filmed with Fred. We filmed with Lanny. We filmed with Warlord and with Kevin Sullivan. And Lanny took us to, like, we didn't film it, but he took us to Randy's house and showed us, like, because he told us a story about, like, maybe like 7-8 months before he died. His dog died. And they cremated the dog, and then they had like a just him and Randy in the backyard, dumping the ashes in the backyard. And he said, this is what I want, something where, like, nobody else is there, it's just the people who matter. And then they had a private funeral for Randy,
Yeah,
but it was just his mom and Lanny and Lynn, his Randy's wife.
yeah. But then Lanny was gracious to you. I mean, so maybe he was bipolar or something. I mean, you know,
Yeah,
that's
I mean, this was the like I said,
contract.
the thing was 10 years earlier or whatever. The podcast, the context of it, I'm saying, maybe is he knew me. He figured out that he was talking to me and maybe other marks or something, and he didn't want
Mhm.
to. He was annoyed with whatever the line of questioning was. Nobody asked him anything inappropriate. Like, nobody asked him about, like, if he got one of his ribs removed to do the thing that everyone says that Lanny Papa was famous for,
Right.
like Marilyn Manson rumors.
Exactly right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when you agree to be a guest on a podcast, I mean, part of that is people are going to ask you questions, and you might have, no, it probably had nothing to do with you. He probably just is, you know, I don't want to diagnose someone, so maybe it's just moody. I mean, you know, again, creatives are often, you know, sort of people of extremes. I mean, that's part of it. But you got them on a good day once, you got them on a bad day once. But
Right, right, yeah,
I doubt it has anything to do with you. I mean, you know,
yeah. I'm sure
yeah.
it has nothing to do with me.
Like if I told you, yes, I'm going to come on your podcast, and you started asking me questions, I just like stone faced you. I mean, I'm the weird one, not you.
Yeah,
Especially like professionals, usually they will tell you what their guidelines are beforehand. Like they'll tell you things that are off the record. Don't ask me about this, or they might ask for questions in advance. I mean, he's he's a professional. He's like Lanny Poffo is probably more famous than 94% of the current wrestlers out there. Just because he was leaping Lanny Poffo and the Genius at the time when wrestling was its hottest, and
genius of glory.
people, yeah, and people just knew him. He was in the cartoon. People knew him. There was ice cream bars. I mean, so it's like, I'm not saying that he has a legacy that transcended wrestling, but he's more famous than, say, Kenny Omega, and Kenny Omega is like arguable. People will argue he's like one of the best in the world.
Right. So, um, right now, you said your oldest kid is 24, right?
Yep. Hmm.
And your other one is 20, right?
Hmm.
Um, so let's say, I call this segment. We usually start inside of the wrap up. I call
Okay.
this segment audio time travel, right?
Yep.
So 20 years from now, in 2044, your kids stumble across this recording in a time stamp from right now, in this time, in this year. You're speaking directly to those ears that are listening to you 20 years in the future. that could be your kids, could be your wife, could be the people who care about you the most. What messages are you giving them?
Well, to the kids, I'm going to say, I'm sorry I wasn't there as much when you were younger, but I did work very hard, and we almost had it all. I know that doesn't mean much now, but we were almost there. We were almost at that point where you would have had, would have had jobs and equity, growing up, and it was almost there, and it wasn't blown exclusively for the reasons that you think it was. So I am sorry about that, but uh, you know, give your old man a break. Life's hard, and I'm actually an okay guy. Um, to my wife, my current wife, of course, you are a miracle. The way I cherish you and tell you I cherish you, I truly cherish you. To my parents, thank you for being supportive when you didn't need to be supportive. You could have turned your back on me. Um, and to a couple people who are former business partners, if you're still breathing when you hear this, don't think I don't think about murdering you every single day, and I probably will do it one day.
This is evidence.
It's evidence. Don't worry. I will be. It will be when I don't feel like there's anything left for me to lose. But it will be slow and it will be painful for you, not me.
I appreciate you. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Um,
Is it?
I look forward to us doing this again, man. I really do. I think I'm open to, like, dude. I'm gonna give you my phone number if you ever need to. If you ever need a friend, if you ever need a resource, if you need to just talk to somebody, you just need to have ears listen to you say words. I'm here for you. If I can be a
I
resource
appreciate all
in
that.
any way,
I assure you, I will never take you up on that. But if you text, I will never ignore you. I'm extremely responsive. I have always been an introvert, and I feel like I have like people all over the place. I don't really feel boredom. Um, so obviously, I have a little bit of a psychopath in me because you just heard it. It's
Mhm.
it's there forever. So
Right.
every psychopath has a little bit of sociopathy in them. Um, so yeah, but I appreciate no, that we should definitely keep in touch. And I mean, I don't know that you want to have me on that frequently, but if you want me on like a couple times a year, that could be cool. Um, and no, I would absolutely love to have the beef stew and you on the other show. Like I said, I just got to wrangle one of the other actual stars of the show. I'm supposed to be like the Robin Quivers to the Howard Stern. I'm the sidekick. I'm not the feature
Well,
attraction.
we would probably also really like to have you on the other shows. Beef Stew Lou and I
I
wouldn't mind
I
having
love
you as
being
a
a
guest.
guest. Obviously, I shut down my wrestling podcast. I left the networks I was on. I still guest occasionally on one of them, um, but that's like only in the case of emergency or a pay per view or something. Um, so yeah, but I love guesting. So I'm happy to do it, and I love talking about wrestling. It's the easy. There's a reason there's like 300,000 wrestling podcasts. It's the easiest thing to talk about, and it's so fun to talk about. And it doesn't matter if you're right. It doesn't matter if you're wrong. The consequences to us are, it's like, yeah, I'm still wearing my Ravens jersey from 1996, and that's not like people live and die on those games, but
Right.
you're not going to live and die in wrestling. The whole thing is that it's never ending.
Jeff, do you do any impressions?
Oh yeah. uh, Not really anymore. I
No.
I I could have done impressions when I was younger, but you will find out that at some point certain parts of your body don't work the way they are, and it's not just limited to your knees, your back, and your dick. It's all those things like your vocal cords, and it's not just your eyes and your ears. Right now, whatever accent I do, I just say sounds vaguely Macedonian. And when people say, "Do you mean the Balkan one or the one in Greece?" I just say yes.
Well, I usually have the guest in whatever their best impression is or whatever their favorite accent to do. Have them say how we wrap up the show. We say, "Be fun, have safe, keep evolving."
Be fun, be safe, have safe, and keep evolving. Oh yeah, cream of the crop.
Thanks for doing this, man. I'll catch up with you really soon. And everybody listening to the show, if this is your first time checking out the show, Thank you for the currency of your effort and your time. If this is your first time checking out the show, check out other episodes. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. Make sure to hit that like button. Interact with me. Prove to me that you exist. Leave a comment below. I frequently say if this is your toilet time, if you're listening to this or watching this when you're on the toilet, leave in the comment that says flush so that I know that you're checking the show out while you're pooping. Be kind to yourself, be kind to others, be fun, have safe, keep evolving. Bye.